Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, February 7th, 2014. Lots of news in Washington, D.C. this week. And first up is the debt ceiling fight. Forget about any kind of a debt ceiling fight, government shutdown. That's just not going to happen. John Boehner is already signaling he's going to have a debt ceiling vote, and he's going to get it passed, even if he has to use members of the Democratic Party to do so. And he simply does not want to be blamed for another government shutdown. These guys are thinking about, hey, we will take over the Senate in 2014 and maintain the House. Right to think that, but listen, we have big economic problems. This is absolutely outrageous. And nobody has asked, they talk about the debt ceiling, and nobody has asked about how much are they going to raise the debt ceiling? Well, let's see. They've got a 2-year deal, and, just on the back of the envelope, a computation, I see at least $2 trillion in raising the debt ceiling. And right now we have a cash deficit of, 17.3, 17.4 trillion? That means about this time in 2016, 2 years from now, we're going to have a $19.3 trillion deficit. Now, the number is big when 0.3 equals $300 billion. What do you think foreigners are thinking holding our debt? You mean, whoa, you mean you're not cutting anything? I mean, you're just expanding it another couple of $1 trillion? What do you think foreign holders of our dollars, of our treasury bonds, of our stocks, of our other bonds, what do you think they're thinking? What do they think they're thinking about this out-of-control, runaway spending? We ought to have a serious national conversation about the solvency of America. America is worse than Greece based on our debt to GDP ratio. It's huge. And forget about this phony story. Look at this here. This is what came out. I couldn't believe this. Here, let me hold it still for you. Right here. Right here. Let me get it right there. There you go. They say that our real deficit, just for this year, our annual budget deficit, is only going to be $514 billion. Only $514 billion. That's total nonsense. That's accounting gimmicks. That is chicanery. That is absolutely lying to the American public. Let's just go back to 2013. They said it was $680 billion, our annual deficit, just for that 1 year. According to shadowstats.com, if you add everything up, the banker bailouts, Obamacare, military spending, if you add everything up, what we really, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, everything, if you add it all up, what we really went on the hook for just in 2013 alone, just for 1 year, we went on the hook for $6.8 trillion. Again, the 0.8 is $800 billion. 6.8 trillion in 2013. And for them to come out and say, oh, well, our deficit's only going to be $514 billion in 2004. No, come on, stop. It's crazy. They're lying to the world to make the dollar look better, to make it look like we're doing something. Meanwhile, we're going to crank another $2 trillion on top of the debt ceiling. How can we only have a $514 billion deficit? Huh? Completely and totally unsustainable, and anybody with half a brain should be scared to death because, what they're doing is debasing our currency. They're printing funny money, and that means your money will turn into funny money. Speaker Boehner has killed any hope of any kind of immigration or amnesty deal. I think he's doing that to throw a bone to members of his own party who are upset that he's really doesn't want to fight about the debt ceiling. So he's put off the amnesty, the immigration reform they call it. It's really immigration amnesty. He's put that off. And he says he's going to put it off until the president obeys the immigration laws. President obey the laws. Yeah, it's going to be put off for a while. Representative Mike Rogers, I got to just show you this right here. Representative Rogers, that's him right here. Representative Rogers. He is a big wig in Congress and on the intelligence and foreign intelligence committees and things like that, security. And he thinks that anybody that leaks documents and gives away stolen government property ought to be prosecuted. Like somebody else, like anybody who steals a car and sells it, or steals some hubcaps and sells it. He thinks that they ought to be prosecuted. Journalists should be prosecuted, and who he's talking about is this guy right here. He thinks that Glenn Greenwald, who broke the Snowden stories, he thinks that guys like this should be prosecuted. He thinks journalists should be prosecuted. I mean, it is a government of government, by government, for government, right? He's doing this because, we're stopping all these terrorists. We need to, do all this intrusion to stop terrorists. Really? I'd like to ask Representative Rogers just a couple of questions. Number one, hey, Representative Rogers, certainly you heard about HSBC admitting to laundering money for terrorists. Isn't that treason? Isn't that criminal? Shouldn't these people be prosecuted in jail for laundering money for terrorists? They admitted it. How about Deloitte Consulting, who helped Standard Chartered hide money laundering activity for terrorists? Isn't that criminal? Isn't that treasonous? Shouldn't people go to jail for actually laundering money for our enemies? They said that, some members of Congress are simply furious about the data that was released by Snowden. Really? I mean, you're not simply furious about big banks laundering money for terrorists? You're not furious enough to have hearings? You're not furious enough to, have criminal prosecutions? Hey, call up the Obama administration, some of you Democrats there, and say, hey, here's somebody you can prosecute. Prosecute those big banks for laundering money for our enemies. I think it's hypocrisy at its finest to see a congressional representative to want to jail journalists while bankers are admitting to laundering money for terrorists. I think that's simply outrageous. Secretary of State John Kerry is on what I think, a very embarrassing foreign tour. Extremely embarrassing. I think the Iranians made a fool out of the Obama administration over the nuclear deal that they have negotiated. Basically, the Iranians came out in Davos, Switzerland, and said, we're not negotiating. They overstated all this. That's a pie in the face. In Geneva, Switzerland, when Kerry was at these peace talks with Russia and Syria and Iran, and basically we're not doing anything. We're not going to stop the war. And I said they'd be lucky to get a date for more peace talks. Well, they weren't lucky. They don't even have a date for further peace talks. Meanwhile, the Assad regime keeps dropping barrel bombs on the Syrian rebels. Now, some of them are just Syrian rebels. They want a better lifestyle. But many of them, up to half, according to some published reports, even the government says 20 to 25%, our government is al-Qaeda, backed by the West. And then it brings us to Israel. And listen, here's a little story in USA Today, and I thought this should have been big. This should have been big front page news. Let me hold it still for you, get you good focus. Come on, camera, focus it in. Israel, no deal without state recognition. So Kerry is in Israel trying to get a Palestinian-Israeli peace deal. And, the Palestinians are saying, hey, we're not going to recognize Israel. Wow, that's a huge deal breaker. Now there's talk about boycotting Israel because they're not knuckling under. Israel says, we're not going to recognize, the Palestinians or the Palestinian state unless we are recognized as a state and have a right to existence. Neither side's given an inch. I think that's a huge deal-breaking hurdle. How can there be any kind of a peace plan between anyone if neither side will recognize that the other side has a right to exist? I think I see no real end in sight, and this is just another very sad story, and this is not all John Kerry's fault. I got to give him some, and this is a very difficult situation. But we are not on a road to peace in Israel with the Palestinians or the Syrians or the Iranians, or I'm very worried about the Middle East. If there's not a black swan wild card that flops out on the poker table this year, I'll be shocked. I don't wish that to happen, but I'll be shocked. Finally, my favorite bank, J.P. Morgan. Another story of them paying a fine, this time more than $600 billion, actually $614 million, not billion, $614 million to settle charges for what else? Fraud. More fraud charges settled with a checkbook. And once again, no criminal charges for J.P. Morgan. They're just going to pay a fine. Glad that's over. Here's another, thing that came out last week, and I just want to show this to you. Because, listen, $8.5 billion settlement, okayed in B of A case. Another case where, they had a massive collapse in value of mortgage loans held by New York trusts. Massive collapse in value. They were sold as AAA investments equal to a treasury, and they had massive collapse in value. Whoa, you mean they weren't what they said they were? They weren't AAA? Isn't that more fraud? Toxic mortgage-backed securities will do that. They'll have a massive collapse in value. And no criminal charges. And this past week, hey, bravo, Bill O'Reilly, for getting the president on. I think something like 100 million people watched it just here in the U.S. Got the president on. And of course, he asked him about things like Benghazi and asked him about the IRS, both legitimate stories. Ask about the IRS scandal. And, the president says there's not a smidgen of evidence, which I find stunning. Not a smidgen of evidence. All those people coming to Congress saying, hey, the FBI came, after I became a Tea Party patriot, the FBI came to my business 6 times. I was inspected by OSHA. I had all these, other things that went on. The IRS came down on me, and not a smidgen of evidence. Listen, crimes were committed in this deal. Major crimes, and everybody on both sides of the aisle should be freaking out. I mean, the IRS is being used as a weapon to, thwart a party that's trying to organize against the party in power, and either whether it's Democrats or Republicans in power, the IRS should never be used that way. Not a smidgen of evidence? Okay, Mr. President. I think that's outrageous, but I'll give you that. But the banks, $614 million here, $13 billion there, $8.5 billion, for Bank of America. Obvious frauds and crimes by the bankers. Bill O'Reilly or anybody in the mainstream media, why aren't you asking about that? This is why the economy will never get better. The economy is based on confidence, and you can't have a growing, vibrant economy in a backdrop of fraud and criminal activity by the nation's biggest banks. This is outrageous, and nobody in the mainstream media will ask anybody in a position of power what is going on. This is trillions of dollars in fraud and lost value for homeowners and restitution and fine. This is unbelievable and unprecedented in American history. It's simply too big to miss, and the mainstream media reports it like, another $614 million in settled. Bank of America, okay to settle $8.5 billion, which is a fraction of what was lost, incidentally. Unbelievable. And the mainstream media wonders why they are headed towards the dustbin of irrelevance. That's the way I see it. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments. I have the smartest people on the web. Thank you for using the donations button. I'm Greg Hunter. That's the way I see it. Have a nice weekend.